It's my pleasure to introduce Peter Ballantyne, the head of knowledge management for ILRI. And he came here from Ethiopia for this session, and he's involving his colleagues, so I'll let him talk about it. There's so much we can do with the CGAR centers, and your new strategic plans are kind of opening up more opportunities for open knowledge. And I think among your colleagues, you were the first CGAR center to actually adopt open licensing about, what, 3 years ago?
We followed some other people.
Yep. Okay, you weren't the first. The first I was aware of it. Yeah. But anyway, without further ado, here's Peter Ballantyne.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, what's going to happen next? We're going to do a presentation. I'm looking around at my screen, but there isn't one. Presentation, and then my two colleagues, Imma and Luzma, will give some reflections about the same issues, topics. Luzma is from the IFPRI. She's head of knowledge management at IFPRI, and Imma is from FAO, where she's something important about knowledge management. Something good and important about knowledge management. And then we're going to try and do some conversations and some discussions. And then what we hope to do, and the assignment really that I was given was have a presentation, give some feed for thought, and then try and get us all together to be thinking, to be discussing some of the issues, the questions around results, outcomes, impact of all this open knowledge, open content. So we'll have some group work, and we'll change the setting a bit for that session. And then we hope to end up with some kind of concrete ideas coming from all of us about where do we go next with this, are there some next steps, some actions, some concrete things we can do. Good. I gave myself a different title, and I think you need to, if you're sitting right in the middle, you may want to look a bit closer to the screens, because I was making my font size bigger. Anyway, having seen Chris's first slide, I thought, oh my God, don't do the same thing, Peter. So what I want to talk about is a bit about ILRI's own experience. ILRI is International Livestock Research Institute. We work in the CGIAR Center based in Addis Ababa and Nairobi. I want to talk a little bit about how we've been opening up our knowledge, opening up the research, and then some reflections and thoughts about results, outcomes, impacts of becoming open. That's kind of the idea. It's a work in progress. I'm going to whip through some slides. First thing would be to tell you, talk a little bit about opening this knowledge. What do I mean by that? It's different from what you've heard this morning, this afternoon. It's midnight my time, I think. But what do we mean by that? It's much bigger than open access. It's much bigger than OER. So what does it look like? And then some thinking about outcomes and impacts. I speak very quickly, so if somebody finds me speaking too fast, wave. First, we have a kind of a hypothesis at ILRI. Well, some of us do, some people do, that the business as usual, the way we do research, isn't really working very well. And a colleague of mine, these slides are stolen from him, he's a livestock scientist and he works with feed. And he says, well, you know, the traditional model is that you have here, and the person with the bubble is a scientist, Ethiopian scientist, and he's asking the farmers, what's your problem? The scientists, of course, they know he's a feed scientist. So what do they say? Feed. And so he says, okay, I'll go find some technology, right? And so next thing, our feed scientist returns to the lab and says to his colleague, what feed technologies have you got? And he says, aha, planted forage, etc., etc. And so he says, great, let's try those. And this came out of a real life process with one of my colleagues, a feed scientist. And then he said, this is Alan Duncan, from the project he was working on, that basically business as usual, ask a farmer, go back to the office or the lab, find a technology, right, doesn't really work. We need something different. And then he was a bit embarrassed that Mark Twain would be on the same slide. If you always do, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you always got, which is a very nice quote. So basically, we need to do a few things differently. And for us, some of us is, how do we open up the research? So the thing that's going to be different is change the way we do research, change the way we produce knowledge, change who we produce it with. So what I want to talk about really are these three things. Just give examples. And I'm trying to broaden the conversation beyond outputs, products, resources. It's the whole process. It's the whole way of doing research that we're trying to change. So the first thing is this photograph, which came from something called the Share Fair in Rome in 2009 or 8, something like that, FAO. And this is fabulous. They had a tree of knowledge, and somebody else wrote this leaf. and I use it over and over. This has been kind of our leitmotif. The knowledge isn't the power, it's the sharing that's the power. So this is what we've been trying to do at ILRI is, doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, if you don't share it, you have no power. So, what are we trying to do? There's these things called innovation platforms, learning alliances, IFPRI platforms, many of these multi-stakeholder things. And we've been trying to join, form, animate, catalyze, be in these processes. Why? Because they bring together the knowledge of the different actors, the different communities. We tap into a whole bunch of other people's knowledge, and these things design things differently. They kind of do a kind of a research. Nothing particularly new, but it's becoming very much a kind of a way of really getting to a much open way of doing research. Second thing is opening up to the non-usual voices. And again, it's something very similar. How do we really make sure that our research process is informed by other people's knowledge, not just scientists, not just academics, but also the farmers, the communities. And examples, we're doing a lot of work right now with participatory video. Very challenging, very interesting. The results come fantastic, nice complements to our baseline survey. So how do we really use things like participatory video, participatory radio, same kind of idea. There we've been working with Farm Radio, a Canadian NGO, to really see how you engage with the farmers and bring their knowledge and have it come through the radio. Happy strategies. You've heard of the Happy Families game. We have a Happy Strategies game where you try to match technical interventions with what communities really want. And you can see on the right-hand side, the ladies playing the game. And the left-hand side, it's more development agents doing something. Sandboxes. How do you, it's not just about the communities. This is the climate change research program of the CGIR. They want to plug into, how do we plug into different types of people, those boundary people that somebody mentioned. So those are kind of, what I wanted to do there was more or less say is the whole research, the researchers themselves are doing things differently. So if you think about results, outcomes, impacts, these things are much more complicated than just how many downloads is your document getting. Then, of course, there's also the research products. Those things, closer to the heart of this group, perhaps, some of you. We're doing a lot of work with social media, with different tools and things. So, for example, open planning. Every event we're doing, this is the research program on livestock and fish. Every event should have a page, should have a story, should be announced. Anybody can find out about it. We record the events in a very simplistic way sometimes, but every event we do has a page of some kind. We capture photographs, we capture the notes. It's all public, it's all open. A lot of people are discovering our scientists by coming across these pages. It's kind of opening up new connections in a sense. We don't go for beauty, very pragmatic, very functional. What's going on in this project? This is a planning workshop from last year. In the past, this sort of stuff was never ever shared. We would have a meeting, we wouldn't tell anybody, we'd invite a few people, do all the planning and inform the world later perhaps. Open projects, we're doing the same thing. Many of our projects, we're trying to do similar, have a wiki page or something. Here you can find the different activities, the different notes, all the different, what's happening in the project. Presentations, everything's open, goes out. Open photos, everything goes out. Open reports, DSpace, everything we publish, we produce is in here, in full text, downloadable, except the closed access journal articles. We can't get them. We're doing something similar with other CGIR centers and projects. Open source, the code from the DSpace is up on GitHub. We have a very active Linux developer in Nairobi, and he says, okay, I want to share, so we have the GitHub. Open data, I put IFPRI here because I know that Marina is here. We are trying to go towards Dataverse. We haven't got there yet. IFPRI is already there. CCAFs, many other parts of the CGIR are. We will move here. All the data, I don't know if it's all the data, but much data is here, again, opened and documented. Open to reuse. Everything we do has a Creative Commons on it, if possible. We try to, the publisher stuff from Cabby and Elsevier, we can't do it, but everything we produce has. Open for feedback. As an organization, we're trying to listen. So when we developed our new strategy recently, we went out and engaged and discussed. All the comments are online, all the critical comments are online. And this last notion of working in the open, very attractive, this idea that you don't work behind closed doors. Basically, you use all these tools to document, report, journal everything you do as you go along, and it also brings you in contact with lots of other people. Big cultural changes, many of these, we're not there. Many of my colleague scientists are still struggling with it. So am I, maybe. Whoops. Some indicators. This session's about impact monitoring. So I said, okay, we keep statistics about all of these web things. So here's a diagram you can see here, which shows you the web views of most of our main sites. And late 2009, we kind of explicitly went open. Yeah. And then after that, everything went up. So I say, oh yeah, being open has increased our visibility, right? Looks great. We're not quite sure. We also changed the way we communicate. We launched different things. We published more. We wrote more. We changed our behavior. But going open seemed to have a big effect. Let's see if 2013 does it. We tried to do a breakdown of what the proportions are. And you can see here in 2000, at the very bottom is intranet. Of course, only very few people can see that. That's us. And this is the percentage of the total views. Yeah. And you can see the biggest growth area has been the repository. The open access repository, the biggest percentage increase, but also the social media, the top block. So what we're seeing is quite a different, the composition of our views is quite different. There's also geographical stuff, but this I thought was interesting, and I think we're getting more and more open in terms of the products we produce. But what does that really mean? And at ILRI these days, in CGIAR, everyone's talking about theories of change, impact pathways, outcome pathways. I suppose everybody here is the same, perhaps. And I was trying to think, well, if I want to measure that, I've shown you some charts. They look good. My Director General, he loves this one. Great. ILRI's going places. Are we? Where? Not sure. So, but we are going somewhere. Of course, that's not strategic. That's off the record. I know I'm being videoed. Totally closed access video, I hope, never to be shown by anybody. Anyway, what I want to say is that, so here on the left-hand side, in a sense, we're looking at the openness of the content, the products, the processes. How open are we? How have we managed to? And I think there's quite a lot of people looking at how we get stuff more open, and we've been doing a lot of that. But the big challenge, in a sense, is, and in our case, it's research. Somebody else might have education there or health or something, but how do we kind of show that by being open, we make a difference in the middle line? And this has been the big focus of my work, at least, is how do we improve the quality of our research? How do we make it more inclusive? How do we get more transparency? And somehow link it to the change in behavior. By being open, we do something in the middle. And then there's the one over here. By being open and having good research, do we somehow prove that farmers are, communities are better fed? Goodness knows. I don't know, but it seems to me that we should think a little bit about where are we trying to go, how will we get there, and I've come up with this very classical output, outcome, impacts sort of thinking, and we'll come back to this with the group work. So remember those three words. And I thought, yeah, I looked around the literature and what we do in ILRI and other places. What are some of the indicators of this openness? Yeah, citations, impact factors. Counting views, I showed you all my views, they all went up. Fabulous, I'm really open. Downloads, how often people are co-creating. There's stuff here, lots of metrics. It seems to me these are all to do with the outputs. And they tell you, basically, you have a lot of outputs and maybe something about the openness of those outputs. So what? Does that matter? The open access community has been using some of these indicators to say open access is as good as or as better than closed access. So I thought, what other theories of change are out there? And I found a couple of interesting ones I want to share with you. One is open data. There's been a lot of work around open data and government and how by making data open, you can transform a lot of things in our lives. And this is a meeting from last year, a very interesting report in Brazil, and they basically identify citizens as the beneficiaries. So they go straight from the left-hand side. We have data, we've made it open, and as a result of that, services are improved, citizens are empowered. And this seems to me to be something over there in our impacts. This paper is really nice because it goes through a whole theory of change. There are very few indicators, methods, tools, but it's really nice because it says, here we go from, I've made my data open, citizens are now empowered. I've made my data open, government services are more efficient. Really interesting. The second one is around open educational resources, OER, and the Commonwealth of Learning produced recently a business case, and they say here OER will help create a revolution, will make education more transparent, improves the quality, facilitate active learning. So there's a whole bunch of ideas here. If you do OER as opposed to closed ER, these good things will happen. So I think this is probably to do with outcomes. Educational outcomes will be improved if you make your ERO or something like that. Then I went to open access. This is more all food for thought in a sense, because what for me is what you have to think, what is it we're trying to measure? Why are we trying to do this? At open access, and this came from a nice blog post last year from the Berlin 9, and interesting here, it said it wasn't just about open access gives you more visibility. It says open access can amplify and improve research. Yeah, it drives productivity. It makes things faster, better, speeds translation. So this for me is again about outcomes. What are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? And then we can look at those indicators. So what I kind of drew from this was, what are some of the outcomes that we might want to be looking at in terms of open actions? Yeah. So and my thinking is, you have to make things open. It's a deliberate choice. You can also leave them closed, whether it's a publication, a photo, a research process. There's a choice here. There's a whole continuum. And if you want to make it open, we have to sort of justify it. What are the outcomes that we're going to get by making it open? And here are some of the ones that I kind of culled from those lists. Cost savings, empowerment and engagement, transparency. Lots of question marks you will see because I have really no answers. The whole access, availability, visibility of the content, the return on investment, improved quality of education, research. So there's a whole lot of potential outcomes that we could be working towards. And the question, of course, is where do they lead to? And if we want to look at, and the question you had earlier about, are those farmers changing their behavior? That's super difficult because you may say our education, we've improved the quality of the education. We've improved our relationships with farmers, but have they really changed their behavior because of open approach? Quite tough, I think. So that's about all I wanted to say. We're going to have 3 questions to discuss in our groups, but before that, let me ask, is it Imma or Luzma? It's nice because it's Imma, Luzma. So which ma do we ask to come up? There's a fight going on. The idea is they give a few more thoughts because I've covered very partially what's going on. Luzma's from IFPRI, a leader in policy research. They've been doing a lot of work with fabulous work around indicators and websites and all those sort of things. So give us a couple of, what's your take on all of this?
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
The video.
I don't know if I want to be in the video. Okay. One of the things interesting that I was following when Peter was presenting was, okay, we're at this stage where we can easily put things up, and he showed multiple ways of putting up the information. But this is where things are changing a little bit nowadays, is that we used to dump information in websites, in wikis, in blogs, in different places. But then is the chaotic situation to try to find it. And Imma will tell us more about this situation because, yeah, it's open. It's out there if you find it. And that's a struggle. But what, like IFPRI and some other centers, ILRI, are trying or starting to using open architectures to manage certain kind of objects. For example, institutional repositories. We all have heard now of this big thing happening, institutional repositories. And what you have inside is open, let's say, the publications that your organization does, or the data that your organization does. And what it makes is that it generates a unique identifier per object, per author. You have authors also with ORCID, which is the system that each author has a unique identifier. So at the end, we will be using these triplets. And you don't have to go to IFPRI or to ILRI or to FAO to be able to find or have information. The people can embed or can use these triplets and present your information in their own portals with their own essence, with their own needs, and and you're going to be there, or your organizations or your product is there without having them to come to your site. And we have done that with an example with Land Portal, which is with IFPRI and FAO, that they have created a portal regarding land rights, and they pull out data from FAO and from IFPRI, and publications from FAO and from IFPRI, let's say for the country profiles or in Kenya. So this is the status in data from the Global Hunger Index that we have, and we have it with the SparkQL, and which is an open system with the triplets. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about, but if somebody wants to find out a little bit more, I can explain. But also with publications with the OIE, PMH compliance, or an API. So they don't have to jump to IFPRI. No, they pull their information there as they need it. Okay. Imma, how are you going?
1 second. I have a question. Just what Elizabeth was showing you was IFPRI's strategy to get more impact. What are the metrics? What are the indicators you use to know that you're getting more impact from doing that?
Okay, we use several tools. I'm over this thing about downloads because everybody measure downloads, and the impact that your DG is so impressed that grows and grows and grows. We saw all these social media, all of them grow. They grow every time, so that's a constant. I think that what is key here is that we really need to start seeing some things that are more key. With the URI that I was saying, it is like a unique identifier, like the ISBN or the ISSN is that we knew from the past. When that information is pulled, it triggers a counter. And sometimes people download the whole book, but they only read the index. So what we want is that we really pull measurements that really counts the truth. Like with Google Books, they don't measure downloads. They measure number of pages that you went through the book. And that's a measurement that says more, because IFPRI books are downloads for the millions. And I don't believe completely that they are reading all those books. It is different.
Good.
But there are no measurements.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Imma, same question.
Just I will say that I'm information management specialist in FAO, just in case. No, what I wanted to add to what my colleague said is that openness is not enough in terms of being accessible on the web. So if you want to be accessible on the web, it's important to publish the content using specific standards. And it's important that standards are widely used. So, and by standards, I mean to describe what you are publishing on the web properly, to use classification systems. If it's possible, these classification systems should use URIs, unique identifiers, for each keyword that you are using. It's also important in a kind of way to complement the sharing concept, that what you publish on the web should be exchangeable. So that when you publish this content, you are doing it in a way that people not only can access to it through the web as an end user, but search engines can also capture this material and can be integrated in other databases. Always adding your link to the full text, video, or whatever, so people can get to your website at the end. But you have to find other focal points to get to your material. Also because in some cases, probably, I don't know, in the cases of today, probably it's not the best example, but it could be that other countries, other communities are interested in your material. And as the colleague said this morning, since you are publishing using content publishing on open access or open content publishing license, they can simply translate it to be reused and etc. As must, I mean, more it is used, is harvestable, is accessible, probably this can help to make a kind of evaluation of this impact, as Peter is trying to show. Yeah, I'm finishing, Peter. Okay.
Oh, you finished?
No, okay.
Go ahead, finish.
So, well, that's it. So what I'm trying to say is that openness should be together with specific standards, and these standards are also provided either by Food and Agriculture Organization or United Nations. You can find other organizations, but simply they have to be widely used. Okay?
Thanks, Imma. You'll be surprised to know that Imma works for the Agricultural Information Management Standards part of FAO. Imma, tell us, though, about all these things. You mentioned a lot of good things to do, sharing and linking and all that. So how does FAO assess the impact of its web communications?
Well, I can talk about what we are doing through the Agricultural Information Management Standards website, where we are publishing standards, we are publishing videos, slides, etc., different. So what we are doing always is to put all this material in repositories that are open and they are accessible using different exchange standards and protocols. So for instance, as an example, slides are published in the SlideShare. So this helps us because every week we receive a kind of report of who is using it, where it has been used, etc. It's a kind of way to evaluate how our effort publishing content on the web is being used or having a kind of impact. For the rest, what we do is that we have a website where people can access to all these, and they can also register. So we are creating a kind of community of practice behind all the things that we are doing, and through this community of practice, we are getting feedback. In our case, our impact is very clear, is we are getting feedback directly from the community. Yeah.
Thanks. We had a share fair in Addis Ababa a couple of years ago, and our speaker was Owen Barder, who's a big thinker in kind of transparency of information and those things. And he said that the most important thing that we don't do is get feedback. And that was one of the big gaps. Everything is really missing. And what I heard this earlier, some of the ActShare stuff, is there seems to be some loops. Those students were doing some looping. Okay, good. You heard some feedback. We didn't really get Imma. I don't really know how FAO measures the impact. You track a few things, like we all do. But what's the impact? Yeah.
I always have problems, as I told you before, is because impact has implication in different aspects. So I can imagine that an FAO, the document repository, has an impact to those that are accessing to the books and articles that we are publishing, but it's not reaching farmers. And but doesn't mean that there is another type of impact that is reaching farmers in a way or another. So all depend on target users. So what are the users that we want to reach, and the means that we are putting there.
Good. Okay, that was just to give some. I gave you my spiel, some different views, some different questions. We're not going to take any questions. We're just going to go into groups. I have questions for you. What you want to do is form 6 groups. 6 tables in the room have flip charts on them. And we need everybody to spread themselves across those 6 tables. So exercise number 1 is to find the tables with the flip charts. Yeah? Now, there are 3 questions. So 2 tables will discuss question 1, 2 question 2, and 2 question 3. Should we give it as this is a question 1 table? Yeah? You were allowed to move. You don't have to stay. There's another flip chart. This is a question 2 table. Yeah? Question 3 table. Question 1. Where are the rest? Question 2 over here. Is another flip chart somewhere? Question 3 over there, right? So what we want to do is for you to think about those. I've broken them into the same topics as I used. The outputs. How do you assess and measure the openness of the outputs? Yeah? And the results. By making them open, how do you know? How do you measure that? Yeah? Second one is around outcomes. What types of outcomes are you trying to achieve by making your work open. Okay? Not about the content, not about the products, the outcomes in terms of educational research. More friendly scientists. Yeah? Third one, how might we assess the impact? The table 3 is around impacts, yeah? Impacts of being open knowledge on communities, farmers, let's say, or learners or society. I had the example there. They made the link between make data open, citizens benefit. How might we do that? Yeah? So what we're looking for is a conversation for about 10 minutes, very brief. The briefest conversations are always the best. And then we want you to pull out one point from your conversation. What's the big thing you get? And then we will come together and, yeah? And then we'll come together. Yeah, we want to have one big thing on the wall. I don't know how we do that. There, at the back, there's a wall with wood. And there's some pieces of paper somewhere to write the one big thing on. The second assignment is to look at the bottom one in italics. What one thing should AgShare do? Yeah? So, if your group is talking about measuring openness of outputs, is there a piece of work, is there something that AgShare should really pay attention to? Because there might be an opportunity in this project to really push the boundaries a bit, get beyond downloads, get to really what's really happening on the ground, get to behaviors. Okay? So form your 6 groups. It'll probably be very noisy. Make sure you introduce yourselves to each other at your tables. Yeah, so you know who you're talking to. Draw a timeout for a moment. So we'll do the famous timeout, the American timeout. Yep. Wow. Okay. Good. We need some. Who wants to go first? Should we go follow the sequence of 1, 2, 3? Okay, group 1 over here. Yep. Okay, guys, can you just get time out for a minute? Sorry. Time out. Yes, need to listen. Okay. Okay, group 1. Can you give us something? Your big conclusion. Still going over here. We'll come together just for 5 minutes, hear the feedback, and then we'll go back into groups again. We have a second question for you still. Yeah. So this is kind of the preliminary feedback from over here. Yeah. Yeah. We need some help. Who's the person? Oh wow. Can you pick one big thing out of that? Okay, good. Give us this. This is what they should do, right? No, hold that one, please. That's be better. Hold that. Yeah. What I'm looking for is your answer to the question first, though. Yeah. Good. So we hope that. Yeah. Okay, they're negotiating. They're voting for the top one. Okay, can somebody give us number 1? We will keep them all, but give us number 1, please. Can you stand up and so we can see who you are, maybe? Okay, folks, let's listen, please.
Hi, my name is Diana. I'm with MSU Global, and our big idea for the first part of question 1 would be a survey or a questionnaire on who is reading the article versus doing something as drastic as putting a cookie on their computer to track the sort of things that they're doing.
Okay, so that's your big thing. You want to have a second big thing? Because I now have somebody to help write. That's even better, huh?
Yeah, this one's even better. Our grand conclusion is to develop some sort of AgShare app or some sort of mobile accessibility. Is it mobile accessible / translatable? The example that was used that these farmers, instead of having a computer, are using their phones for those devices. So can you put something on the phone that can instantly translate it to their language and make it accessible through their phone? That was our grand idea.
Okay, so that's... Yeah, is that fair enough? Ultimate translation on mobile phones, as I understood, yeah? For farmers. That's one thing that AgShare should do, right? And then the answer to number 1, how do you assess and measure, is through a survey of users, and worst case scenario is to stick cookies on their computers or something like that, browsers, right? Good, save that for now. Group 1, another group 1, right? Over here, group 1. Okay, same thing, please. Answer to the question if we can.
John Spank. I don't know what group I'm in. I'm in many, I guess. Food fraud is the research topic that we have. We really said that we thought that first we're trying to track ideas, but then we kind of went off on a tangent to define, how we do that. And I think first off, the content itself needs to be open. So a scholarly article leads to a trade journal article, leads to a newspaper article, leads to a blog post. And so the first part is openness, that people have access to as much information as possible. The second is that it's presented to many. It's one thing if you just put it on your website and no one finds it. And amplification was a term that was used. And then digestible to that audience. So when they read it, they can actually understand it. And then finally, critical step that a lot of PhDs are really happy to do, especially in the hard sciences, stay involved in the process all the way through. So when you present the article in the journal, you're not done. You have to stay because you have to manage the message all the way to the end. People will sometimes miss the message as it goes through. So I think that's presenting it all the way through. And then at that point, we were looking at really trying to manage the ideas, and we didn't have a good solution for that. But trying to manage the thoughts. No. Well, I think probably one of the keys is that the message gets that openness is getting to a wide audience in a way that's digestible for them. And but managing, we have to also monitor it to make sure that message is correct as it goes all the way through the system.
But that notion of an open idea was interesting, no? Open idea, open thoughts. It sounds a bit like the Communist Party in some places. Good. Let's come to this group over here. Group 2, right? No agreement. Okay. Open disagreement is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think a little bit of this might have been my fault, so I apologize. But the things we did agree on, I think, first of all, was that the openness itself, the fact that people can use stuff and look at stuff and take stuff away as permitted by the license. That is the most important outcome, and the issue comes with that is stuff size are open or it's not a very satisfying measure. The next thing we talked about was the visibility of the resources. I mean, making them discoverable in numbers of places, and I think that's where the disagreement started, because we all agreed that we loved metadata, that it is wonderful, and we wished we had lots more of it, but we felt, or at least some of us felt, the problem with the metadata was that it actually is very expensive. You get to the stage that the amount of metadata you want to add to something might mean that the open release of that thing is not actually viable, and that's clearly a bad thing, because you're losing all of the benefits that you would have got through it being open. Now, this isn't so much a problem in funded projects, because obviously if you pay people to make metadata, then they'll make metadata. But it is after the project's complete and you want people to keep publishing resources openly, keep sharing, keep working. If the metadata cost associated with that is too high, if the cost of additional effort is too high, then they might not actually do that. If you keep the metadata cost right down, and it's not. And that was kind of the thing we kept going around talking about, but fundamentally openness of itself to benefit. And I think that was the bit that we definitely agreed on. So I'd like to end agreements.
Okay. It sounds like you answered question 1 to me. Question 4, okay. That was group 2, right? Group 2 over here. Where'd you guys get to? Can somebody share?
Yeah, I'll do it. So the big idea we kind of landed on is, it's similar to this. It's that there needs to be some content curation, and it's just not a big pile of openness stuff. So we talked about cataloging, finding systems, using the use of keywords. What keywords? How do we know which keywords the potential collaborators we want? So when we talked about an outcome for the researchers, is we wanted to have better collaborators. And how would we measure that? By how many funders, how many partners, who's interested in working with you. And then we also talked a little bit about how we would have better measurement techniques on the openness of the research. So.
You talked about the measurement. Did you actually come up? Did you decide on one?
Well, when we talked about the outcome we were seeking, it was better collaborators. So the measurement would be something along about our funders, our partners, and who wants to partner with you. Now, how do you measure that? But is it just a quantity, a number, the status of those partners, that type of thing?
But the thing was better collaborators, not collaboration. Yeah. So it's behavior of people. Good. Okay. Let's go to group 3. Part 1. Who can share back from this group? Greg, or who is it? Some people sitting back far away. Can you give us your big answer?
The big answer? Oh, well, I'll give you the. Sure. Yeah. So we had impacts. We had the expansion of. Geez, I can't even remember these very well. I may need some help. Quality of life change is one. It was really hard, actually, because it's hard to measure impact. I guess that's why these questions are interesting. So a quality of life improvement, it's really unclear how to measure that, but and then trying to measure like secondary effects, like if you made a wiki, not how many people accessed it, but how many people actually edited it. So the sort of like second and third tier interactions indicates that you have a more centralized, a stronger community in the center. So that's something that may indicate that you're having more of an impact. It's those second tier things. And then just looking at sustainability sort of from day one, designing the system to be sort of sustainable and have an impact, or have measurable impacts from the very beginning, because if you don't do that, you really end up in a pickle in the end because you have no way to measure that. And then
yeah, just to add to that one, Peter, I'm sorry I missed a few of your slides in the beginning, but the only thing looking at these questions, and if you can look at from last to first, what one thing should AgShare do? That's coming? Okay, wonderful. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Maybe taking some points from the first two groups and what we discussed here. Maybe the unique nature of AgShare is that's only specifically allocated for the agricultural materials. So, for example, if we would look at MIT OpenCourseware, when we say MIT OpenCourseware, that's for the engineering courses. And if you would look at the gateway to the educational material, that's for the schooling materials. And if you would look at the Merlot, that's only for multimedia educational. That's like a repository for the learning object technology. But nothing is available for the agriculture except the AgShare. Maybe how AgShare is digitizing this knowledge and bringing to the open community, the global community. That's the uniqueness of AgShare. But how do we measure that one? Like maybe once we have the digitization, and AgShare maybe should come up like a one-stop shop for all the agricultural learning materials, even the information resources, the video modules, or the blog posts, or the audios, whatever that may be. So we need to have one kind of specific feature that's like a community of practice to bring various communities together, agricultural communities together, to aggregate the knowledge. And also we need to bring the experts to validate this knowledge, what we are aggregating, before we disseminate that one to the intended recipients, that may be farmers, that may be extension agents, that may be students, or that may be NGO folks. And also we need to figure out innovative approaches, that's a mobile communication or maybe web-based approaches to reach out to these people. That's one thing we can look at in a bigger way. The assessment one, the one way to assess these things is like maybe once we have this web, we can look at when we have started this one, how many communities are there over a period of time, how many communities we are seeing. For example, if one specific learning object or a learning material, how many downloads one person, otherwise that particular learning resource received. If that's 100, that's the top one. That's the best one. These are some techniques we need to use. Maybe these things can emerge, maybe out of our discussions in these 2 days discussion. Hope that helps.
Yeah, it sounded like more than one thing for AgShare to do. We'll come back on that, right? Downloads, is that a way to assess impact? Yeah, you just, no. Okay, good. Group 3. Oh my gosh. Here we go. This is narrowed down. Okay, good. Do you need a helper to hold your sheet for you?
Sure. Here, be helpful. So we came up with a lot of different things, and what we realized around the whole thing in terms of finding really practical impacts on people's lives was that we needed to have people, we needed to target what impact we were looking at from the beginning. There might be all sorts of other impacts that we would discover and make note of along the way, but we would need to pick something as a starting point around which we could build all these other things so that we had the appropriate measurements to that impact. So if we're looking for improvements in health, clearly we need to have contacts with healthcare providers in the area and someone we know who's providing an intermediary so that we know that it's actually our content that's being delivered. And that we would, so moving towards the one big thing, of course, if you only have one community when you're doing this, you don't know whether it's good research. So you would have parallel projects going on in a number of different places. So you pick one target that you're looking at to measure in lots of different places. And what AgShare can do is to have access to all those different partners, so to coordinate that research project with some kind of target impact. Maybe it could be 3, I don't know, but some target impact. The end.
Thank you very much. So you had, oh yeah, okay. So on that last one, it would do kind of research, cross-country research, in a super open way, right? I'm putting words in your mouth. Fabulous. Okay, good. So we have another 5 minutes. How many of those things do we have? 3, 2. We have the app, the AgShare app, the one-stop shop, the parallel projects. Yeah? So that's 3. We have 6 tables. Did some tables not? We didn't ask that question, right? You guys, did you do the big question? The big thing for AgShare? Do you want to? Sure. Okay, you guys did the big thing. Do you guys do a big thing for AgShare? Did you get to that? Question, the bottom one. Yep. Okay. That's good. Okay, we have 5 minutes. Please revisit your analysis and answer the 4th question. If you've already answered it, you can do your emails. Yeah? Or you can improve it, in fact. You could improve it. Yeah? One thing AgShare should do, ideally linked to your